Mariah with Thread and Maple, and in today's video, I'm going to guide you through how to read a knitting chart. At first glance, a knitting chart can look like a lot and be very intimidating, but once you understand just a few basic principles, knitting from a chart might just become your preferred method. Now, in order to understand knitting from a chart, I've broken it down into three main principles to understand. The first one being that each of the squares represents a stitch. So here I have an example of a colorwork chart, and this is actually from the designer Yamagara. This is called Chloe's Cushions. And what we see here is two different colors on this chart, a white and a gray. So this is a colorwork, a colorwork chart. And I have a little bit of this knitted up, and you can see here how I have the colorwork image starting to form here. Here is a simpler chart in the way that it's smaller, but you will notice that there are a lot of strange symbols in those squares. So again, the principle still applies that each of these squares is representative of a stitch that you are going to knit. And when they have a symbol in it, you are going to look at the key, and the key is going to tell you what that symbol means. The other thing you might notice about a knitting chart, besides all of those squares, is there is a series of numbers along the bottom of the chart, and there's another series of numbers along the side. And so here on the bottom, you have number 1, and it goes all the way over, in this case, to number 54. And each of these numbers is representing that stitch. So this is stitch 1, this is stitch 2, this is stitch 3, and so on. On the side here, these numbers are representing the rows or rounds. In this case, this chart is colorwork in the round. So these numbers are all representing the round. So this is round 1, this is round 2, this is round 3, and so on. And when you go to start reading your chart, what you want to find is where the stitch in round 1 and 1 are. And that's the second principle for reading charts. You're going to start reading your chart at stitch 1 and round or row 1. That is typically going to be down here in the right hand corner. Now, the tricky part here is that you are going to read the chart differently for in the round versus flat. So let's start with what I think is the easier one, is in the round. We're going to find round 1, stitch 1. It's down here in the right hand corner, and this is where we are going to start knitting. And we start at the number for the round, and we are going to work our way across, almost like you're working away from that number 1. Okay, so I have my sample here, and I've already worked a few rounds. And the last round I worked was round 12. And I'm going to move my ruler up so I can see round 13, and I can follow those instructions. So we'll do a little bit of those together. My first stitch is going to be a white one, which in this case is my contrast color. So I'm going to work one contrast color, and now I'm going to work the second contrast color. And now I can switch to 2 of the background colors. In my case, that's white. And then my next one, I have 3 of the contrast color. Now I've reached the end of the front part of this project. I do turn my work, but I'm continuing to knit in the round. And the way this project is set up, I just continue along this row. I've finished to here, and I'm going to keep going and keep knitting all these stitches in this row. So here I have 3 of my background color. For me, that's white. And then I have 3 contrast color. And this row is fun because when you look, it might seem complicated, but I'm just knitting 3 background colors, 3 contrast colors. So I've knit a full round where I finished round 13, and I started here at the number 13 and worked my way across. And because we're working in the round, I'm going to come back to the right side and find number 14. And this is where I will start round 14 and work my way across. So when you're knitting in the round, you will always work from right to left. So knitting flat from a chart can be a little bit more confusing. So I've started just a tiny sample of this chart, and I wanted to just go through knitting a few of these rows to help give you an idea of the process here. I'm going to be starting again for that second principle. We start at the right, the bottom right. Here is number 1, 1. I'm going to start in this square right here. And over on the key, I know that I am on the right side of my work because I am starting from the right to the left. And in the key on the right side, that open square means I'm going to knit. And in this same row, I'm going to get to this V with a dot in it. And down here I can see on the right side, I'm going to slip that stitch with the yarn in front. The other thing to notice here is there is a red box around the center part of this chart. And here on my key, it tells me that's the linen stitch repeat. So this red box is really the equivalent to, in a written pattern, when you see the asterisk or a parenthesis or a bracket telling you to repeat that section. So what we're going to be doing is knitting the first stitch. We're going to repeat this middle section until we get to the last stitch, and then we're going to knit that stitch. I've knit this first stitch. Now I'm in my red box here. I'm going to knit that stitch, and then I'm going to slip the stitch with the yarn in front. I'm going to go back and knit and slip the stitch with the yarn in front. And again, you repeat what's outlined in that section. It's usually red. It might be bolded, but it'll indicate that that's the repeat section. And then here I am knitting and slipping for the last time, and I have one stitch left. So I've completed the repeat, and now that last stitch there, I know I am going to knit. And because this is flat, I'm going to turn my work. And when I reveal the next row, it's going to start over here on the left side. Here's where the number 2 is for row 2. So I know I'm going to start over here and move my way across. Now that I'm on the wrong side of my work, if I go over to my key, it tells me that open square on the wrong side of my work, I'm actually going to purl. And then this dot here on the wrong side of my work, I'm going to knit. So the stitches will be represented differently based on whether you're on the right side or the wrong side of your work. So according to my key, this first stitch I'm going to purl. That next stitch, that's just the open V, I'm going to slip with yarn in front. And now I'm going to knit. And I'm going to continue to repeat those 2 stitches across my work until I get to that last stitch. And at that last stitch, I'm going to purl and turn my work. And so you would continue in this manner. I would then move my ruler to reveal the next row. And here I'm on a right side. The number 3 is on my right side here. I'm going to go from right to left. The change in color also indicates a color change, but the important thing here was to recognize that knitting flat, you're going to alternate going from right to left and left to right, and that the symbols will also mean something different on the right and the wrong side of your work. So the last principle hopefully ties it all together. Your chart is a representation of what your work will look like on the right side. So I want you to think about the chart, the piece of paper like this. Especially when we're knitting flat. When we're knitting flat, this is what the front side of the work will look like. If I want to see what the back side of my work will look like, I would have to turn the paper over, just like my knitting project. There's nothing on the paper here, of course. I can turn my knitting project over and see what the back side looks like, but I can't see that on the chart. So the chart is always going to represent what the right side of your work is going to look like. And these symbols do try to attempt to mimic what the stitches will look like. And maybe you can see that these big slip stitches here, you can see those big slip stitches in this sample. And then this is why when you're knitting flat, when you are on the wrong side of your work and working from left to right, that these symbols mean something different on the wrong side of your work. They look different. Because what's happening here on the wrong side, this symbol that's just an open square, and that's typically the knit stitch, it's going to mean purl on the wrong side of your work. And that's because on the wrong side of your work, you will purl. That way it looks like a knit stitch on the right side of your work. So a great way to see this, if you look at this row of stitches here, you see all these knit V's, and these are all open squares, so they are knit V's. But when I'm working this row on the wrong side, so we did row 2 together, when I got to the end, I had to purl that stitch. And purling that stitch on the wrong side helped it to look like a knit stitch on the right side. So again, the color work can be more fun to look at because we're really painting a picture here. You can see that my sample really looks like this picture, okay? So again, this is representing the right side of my work, and I can see that picture being formed, okay? And it's not going to show me the wrong side of my work, which are all the floats, okay? So those are my 3 basic principles for understanding how to knit from a chart. And again, I know that it looks really intimidating at first, but it can be a lot of fun. I hope that you give it a try. But as always, if you have any questions, please let us know in the comments.